Am I getting asked the same questions?
Pretty much.
Cool, so I know the deal.
Yep.
Do you want me not to look in the camera, or?
I'm gonna be saying the questions, but you're gonna be talking as though you're talking.
Yeah, I'm just quiet.
I feel like this is probably exactly what they do on the real world. It's like they're never making direct eye contact with the camera, but they're talking to somebody, because nobody just willingly admits this shit, especially when they're alone. After all the decades of encouragement of not to talk to yourself, or to be alone.
See, I can never do anything real with just the editing alone. How much editing they have is ridiculous.
I found out that one of my, not like my friends, but somebody I was like acquainted with in high school almost made it on the next season in the real world. And after like knowing who she was and like finding out she was almost on the real world, they without a doubt find like a certain type of person to be on the real world.
They do, yeah, no. Especially after like they finally got a good groove of how to do things, get people to watch it.
Like,
get the same thing over and over again.
You know how you watch a show and you're like, these people, like, there's no way they act like this in real life. And the thing is, they do act like that in real life. You just need to really search for those people. And I know one of them, and she was almost on the show.
I know half those people in our school alone. Like,
Oh yeah,
it's just fun.
a lot of them go to Yana.
Yes.
Stoniana.
Stoniana.
It's clever. It's a clever name. Is this recording? Please tell me this isn't recording. This is recording.
DIY just means like there's no like corporate sponsorship. You're doing all the work yourself. Like people all the time say like, like I should get an intern or something, but I wouldn't want like employees. Like I like doing all of my work myself. Because I would kind of go crazy trying to trust other people. So like I kind of have to do it myself as like a necessity of of what I do. It's like it's not something that is up to like a committee to decide or anything. But like I work on committees with people, like show paper is run by committee, and like we have to make decisions as a group, and it tends to work out. Like we tend to not have a problem like coming to decisions. But yeah, DIY I think is just means you're doing it, you're doing what you love, and you're not compromising yourself for any reason at all.
People learning how to play music on their own, people taking music that they created and putting out records on their own, again starting bands on their own, and at the time period one of the biggest, I guess most successful, I mean whatever you want to say successful is, one of the thing that epitomized DIY for me at the time period was a record label called No Idea, started by Var Thielen in the late 80s as a fanzine, and Var, like people around him, didn't think that you had to be born into, I guess, rockdom, or he thought that you could do things on your own. He didn't think that there needed to be a barrier between those on stage and those in the audience. And Var and the people around him decided that, you know what, I don't have to go to Specs and buy records. I can actually become a part of this by making my own.
DIY I think is kind of cut and dry. It's do it yourself. I mean, it gets thrown around a bunch, but for the most part, what it gets labeled on is stuff that deserves it to some degree. Indie is a word I guess a lot of people hate on because it really serves no purpose. Clearly it stems from the word independent, but so many bands that get called indie aren't an independent band at all. I'm a big proponent of the word because that's what I typed into Kazaa when I wasn't exposed to music, and that would bring me to the music that I liked. You type in the word indie into like a live journal community or Kazaa or Google, and it brought me music I liked. So I have an affection for it. I think it's it's just a word. It doesn't really mean anything other than what you put into it.
I assumed like indie is supposed to be independent in the same way DIY is supposed to be do it yourself. These are just words that have definitions that we're all aware of, but once they become like slang, like buzzwords, they quickly get co-opted and become meaningless. Indie particularly though, I don't like, I sort of like DIY because at least DIY has this suggestion of, I feel like it's defining in that it means independent in the most like literal way possible, like without sponsorship is usually what I take DIY to mean. Without doing something like, and do it yourself. Yourself can mean you personally, or it can mean you, your group of friends, or you, your community. But it means that like the audience and the bands and the venue and all of it are from the same group without needing some sort of outside support from some, big brother corporation who's gonna, approve of what you're doing and drop a whole bunch of money and make it possible. I assume indie is supposed to mean the same thing, but indie's been being used since like the late 90s, early 90s, earlier. It's sort of like, to me it falls in the same thing as like alternative. Like it's such a bland word.
To me, indie means, independent. There's, there's shades of gray what independent means. I guess indie means more than anything. I guess the mindset goes back to DIY. I think that it means, definitely started from the do-it-yourself ethic that came out of, I guess, from what influenced me from the early 80s, were bands, again, you know, bands decided to take things into their own hands. They decided to put out their own records. They decided to buy crappy vans and set up their own touring networks, and they decided to play in living rooms, or they chose to go on tour. And I think that the whole idea is we don't, again, need to be Ted Nugent standing up on stage. We can set up our own sort of network, and you know, you don't have to deify those necessarily who seem to have this sort of God-given right to just be on stage, like other people have the opportunity to do and say things, and to and to be heard. So it's like, I can be a fan, I can listen to this music, it can influence me, but I also can be on the other end. And I think independent means that we all kind of take our turns, like should you choose to do so. You know, tonight this group of people are up on stage, and I want to hear what you have to say and what you have to present. And tomorrow night, excuse me, tomorrow night maybe I'm up on stage, and I get to present the things that I create and have some things to say. So I think you know, independent and DIY kind of go hand in hand as far as that's concerned.
Is indie rock music based in punk music?
Again, I think indie music can be punk music. I mean, I describe a lot of things as punk. I mean, I think teaching is punk. I think that you know, opening up your own business is punk. I think that those things also can be indie. I mean, I think that the lines definitely cross. I think that they merge into one another. I don't think that Reprise Records is an indie label just because it's an offshoot of Warner Brothers. You know, I think that indie means independent, and I think that it can go along with business ethics and artistic ideas. So indie and punk, I think, are just, you know, it's about semantics, I suppose. I think that they can mean the same thing, or they can be completely different. It depends on who you're talking to or the context of a conversation. But I definitely think that indie can be punk. I think punk can be indie.
Who were your earliest influences for music?
I was super when I first really started. I had a weird musical upbringing, I guess. Not weird, but when I was in middle school, I skateboarded, so I listened to music that went along with skateboarding, which were punk bands like 7 Seconds and Dead Kennedys and things like that. But at the time period, I really didn't get it. I didn't know it's more than aesthetic. I thought that it was kind of cool, and it wasn't until, you know, later on in high school that I started, or even in college, that I really started getting the idea behind people that put the music out. Get the idea that they were looking at the world in a different way. So I suppose some of the first indie or DIY or punk music that I listened to was some pop punk stuff from Lookout Records, but the stuff that really super influenced me was definitely Discord Records out of DC, started by Ian MacKay, or McKay, or however you want to pronounce his name. Started that with Minor Threat, and they, you know, were touring around in the early 80s, and they really set up basically what I did with my band and my music, the stuff that I was a part of. I would not have been able to do it without the path that they blazed, you know, other bands like the Minutemen, Sonic Youth, and a lot of other bands, Husker Du, in the early 80s, they went and they wanted to go on tour, and they just found people in different cities who opened up their living rooms, who rented out crappy bars, and You know, these people were putting out their own records. They're like, you know what, screw this. Like, we can do this. We don't have to be on a record label. We can start our own record label, and I can put out my own music.
My name's Eden Wilbur. I am the proprietor of Death by Audio. I kind of just run the space. So it's located in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I've been involved with it for about 3 years now. It's been, you know, here and there. It's rocky sometimes, but for the most part, it's a great place to work, and we're able to bring in a lot of really good bands, like local talent as well as touring acts. Just my main idea when I started working here was to try to just bring in touring acts and bring the best locals that would fit with them, so that they would get the best show possible and then want to come back and have a positive show experience in New York, because it's so easy to have a really terrible show in this city. There's so many crappy places to play.
How'd you get started in the Brooklyn scene?
I've lived in Brooklyn for about 10 years, and I probably got involved with the music, I mean, pretty much as soon as I moved here. Like, I would go to shows. I was going to shows like more at mainstream venues like the Irving Plaza and like Roseland Ballroom and Bowery Ballroom, and I just always hated the experience. And then I got into a couple like smaller bands, like probably in like 2003, maybe 2004, like Japanther was coming up and Matt and Kim were coming up, and they were just really good bands, and I happened to see them because I saw another one of my friends' bands at like a smaller spot, and then that just kind of like following those bands just solidified me like following like the smaller spaces, like the more like house venues, like people's apartments and just like the warehouses out in Brooklyn, and it made me want to get more involved. But I had a job at the time, like a 9-to-5 job that I worked that I totally hated, and but it made me enough money so that I could live and do what I wanted to do. I would just go to shows every night after work, and then just be hungover in the morning. But it was a really fun lifestyle. And then I got laid off from that job. I got unemployment for 6 months, and I used the unemployment and not having a job for 6 months to start booking shows as entertainment for everyone. That's the name of my booking agency, I guess you could call it. It's not really an organized business or anything. It's just me answering emails and booking shows.
I'm Joe Ahern. My name is spelled Joeahern. I actually don't live in Brooklyn. I live in Queens. This is the far edge, beyond the far edge of Bushwick is Ridgewood, which is a neighborhood in Queens, which is where I live.
Half Brooklyn, half Queens, give or take.
It's 15 feet into Queens.
How'd you get started in this indie scene?
It's funny, that question is like, how did you start doing it yourself? I've been friends with musicians since my friends started liking music and playing music, and both my parents are artists, so I've always been like going to art shows and stuff like that. I don't know. I like dropped out of college and was like running around the country for a while, and then I came back to New York. This is the short answer. And got a job bartending at a catering hall in Dumbo that was absolutely abandoned during the week when they weren't doing weddings and bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. So I asked my boss if I could curate some shows in the mezzanine of this really gorgeous catering hall right on the water. And yeah, I booked like bluegrass and jazz and folk and stuff like that for about a year and a half every single week. And by the time I was really sick of doing all that stuff, I started looking for other people in Brooklyn that I could collaborate with to have a lot less limitations in terms of sound and attire and all the other stuff that went with doing shows in a catering hall.
My name's Jordan Michael Iannucci. My last name is spelled Iannucci. Most people just call me Jordan Michael. Unless you're like a teacher I had in high school. It's Jordan Michael. Right now, applying to college. I previously worked as a production manager in a printing company. I left to go back to school. Right now, I volunteer for show paper. I'm, I guess, listings coordinator. I don't really have a title. There aren't really a lot of official positions. But as of today, I've been put semi in charge of doing the research for all the listings that you see printed in show paper. We will list shows at like, if the studio at Webster Hall has an all ages show, which they rarely do, but they sometimes do. We'll list that. We have like the Starland Ballroom, the Highline Ballroom, but we also have like basements in New Jersey that are the size of this couch are listed in show paper. And none is ranked over the other. They're all just thrown in there. The only thing that gets special attention is show paper benefits are like in a bold font or a slightly larger font.
My name is David Diem, or Deem, depending on which person from my family. I will call myself a bass player, but I play guitar as well. Not very well though.
Where are you from?
I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida, by way of Gainesville, by way of, I guess now I'm a Brooklyn resident.
Todd P. is one of the longest running and largest show throwing promoters in Brooklyn, and I think is one of the most significant taste makers in the New York music scene and indirectly the country.
He promotes like the biggest shows in area. I know he is, I guess, I don't want to say the mastermind behind show paper, but I'm pretty sure it was his idea. I don't have like trivia of the man I can rattle off, but like if he walked in the door, I can say that's Todd P. I've seen the documentary on him on Pitchfork too, but I don't really feel like that taught me that much about him. But yeah, he books shows and people go out to see them. And if you go to a Todd show, you'll see a whole bunch of people they don't normally see, because a lot of people like read his website and those are the shows they'll go out to. So he does get a crowd that, I mean, it's not like filled with people that are total strangers to me, but I will see people at Todd shows that I don't normally.
Yeah, Todd totally is the guy who influenced me to do what I do. You know, like Todd P was one of the main reason, like one of the best like resources for me to get into like smaller like warehouse shows, DIY shows, like the bands that I mentioned, like Japanther and Matt and Kim, like he booked them forever. You know, so like I found out his website, and then it was just like, you know, the Bible, you know, there for a while of like where to go if you didn't want to fucking deal with the real venue or get like patted down or bag searched, you know. But like, you know, like he was there forever. Like I made friends with that dude and like started working for him all the time. Like I was his sound guy for a long time, and he basically was just like, anybody can do this. Like there's no reason why you have to like work with me. Like you could break out on your own. And so I started doing that, and now like he and I are like, I feel like we're somewhat peers. You know, he's definitely still does a better job than me, but that's because he's getting like the bigger bands. Because if you are, you know, if you're a band who wants to come to New York, like and you want to play in a scene like this, like you go to Todd first. Like Todd will still give you the best show because he has the best promotion. Like he's just been around longer, more people will find out about the show. And it'll be a good show. But if Todd like is too busy or your band's not big enough, then you're gonna look for something else, and I'm definitely there for that,
Other ones are Shea Stadium. There's Dead Herring. There's Woodser.
The other really good spots are like Silent Barn is if I have to pick someplace that's not my place, it's Silent Barn is the best.
My favorite is right here, Silent Barn, because I live a block away. And I also spend time here where we're not having shows. Joe lives here. Joe's my friend. Wheeler lives here. Wheeler's my friend. My friends live here. So, Silent Barn. But as far as like the best, Market Hotel seems to have pretty regular shows, and they get a lot of big touring bands. So that serves a certain purpose.
Do you by any chance read Pitchfork Media?
I don't actually, but I gotta say Ryan Schreiber recently did a really important show paper benefit that made us like money for like 3 months worth of issues, which is like, I don't know the guy personally, but like I can't fault him for anything. Like I know Pitchfork has like single-handedly fucked up how indie music is rated and listened to and watched and bought, but I don't really, it's I operate on such a smaller scale that I don't really I don't really pay attention to it because it's not something that I could put time into because I don't have the time.
I love it. I mean, I grew up reading that. Like I didn't always live in Brooklyn. I used to live in a town where I was the only person who listened to the music I listened to. And that was like my haven. That's where I went to read reviews of bands I liked and to read reviews of bands that I didn't like yet. I don't read it as religiously as I did before because I have other outlets to discover new things, but that's something I'm always going to have like a special place in my heart for. That sounded corny, but it's true. I love it. I grew up with it. It's always going to be a part of me. Yeah, that was the first like indie band I discovered. That's another band I have a huge affection for, Neutral Milk Hotel. I actually only know them because of the Mountain Goats, because the Mountain Goats cover Two-Headed Boy on this weird European radio station. I think it's VPRO. I don't know what the radio station's called, but you can find an MP3. It's somewhere on the internet. I've had it for so many years. It's my single favorite recording of any song ever. Mountain Goats covers Neutral Milk Hotel. There's somebody playing harmonica. I don't know who it is. And then at the end, like some guy talks in a language that I don't understand. And that is how I discovered Neutral Milk Hotel, because I just Googled the song.
Absolutely. I think Neutral Milk Hotel are super rad, and I would say that they are independent in the vein of REM. You talk about this idea of independent music. I mean, I think that, REM is independent, and I would even argue, and people probably will want to slap me for this, but I think REM is a pretty punk band, to be honest, even though they're on a major label. But if you look at their early music, I mean, they were extremely they were political. They definitely they pushed the boundaries of music at the time period, and they did things that I think were not necessarily popular at the time. And I think Neutral Milk Hotel, they're from the same town. They're from the same town, from Athens. So I think that they took REM's influence and they kind of ran with it. I might be wrong about that because I don't know that much about Neutral Milk Hotel, but I have a couple of their records, and I definitely like that. I don't think that DIY or punk or independent music, how they overlap. I don't think that it's necessarily a sound. I think it's more of an idea, and I think that when you're younger, you really get locked into this idea that this has to sound like this. But as you get older, I think that you realize that sound is pretty much the last thing on the agenda. It's more or less honesty and emotion and message and attitude and those sorts of things that need to come through.
Playing Over the Sea more.
In the Airplane Over the Sea. That's my favorite album. No, that's my third favorite album. But in the Airplane Over the Sea, I like more for sentimental reasons. I've gone back and listened to both recently, and I think On Avery Island is better. But I've spent so many, probably like accumulated weeks of my life listening to that In the Airplane Over the Sea. I've had crushes on girls specifically because they had In the Airplane Over the Sea related tattoos on their body. Also exclusively. I don't know if I threw that word in before, but exclusively because they have those tattoos on their body.
I like In an Airplane Over the Sea.
I don't know why they wouldn't respect it. Because they're haters.
I think everybody I know likes that album. It's a great album. I feel like everybody grew up with it a little bit. It's also one of those like right answer albums. Like people ask you what your favorite Beatles album is, you say the White Album. Whether or not this is something people actually like, I don't know, but it seems to be accepted that like the right answer to like what's the best indie rock album, it's In the Airplane Over the Sea, or like possibly 3 others like Slanted and Enchanted by Pavement's another like right answer album. Even though that's another one of my favorite albums, I'm probably just like some pretentious cliche that only listens to things that are in top 5 lists on various magazine websites. I mean, I like Brooklyn. I wouldn't say I love it. It's where I live. It's where I do a lot of things. But I've only lived here for like a year and a half. So, I mean, I love Orange County where I grew up, but I don't love Brooklyn. I wouldn't even really say I love the Brooklyn music scene. I love a music scene. I love that there's places where I can go see shows. I love that there's constantly people doing things that excite me. But I really, like, there's a lot of bands I listen to that I probably couldn't tell you if they're from Brooklyn or not. There's also a lot of bands that are really big in Brooklyn that I couldn't tell you like anything about them. Like there are constantly shows that everybody's like really hyped up to go see, and I don't know who's playing. Flat out, I just really like the things I really like, and I'm kind of ignorant to everything else. I probably shouldn't say that in front of a camera, but it's true.
I mean, it's where my friends are. It's like the same thing I've always said. I grew up in New York, so I didn't move. I grew up in Manhattan, but Manhattan's too expensive, and so not only myself, but none of my friends live there anymore. So everybody I knew from growing up moved out to Brooklyn, and because I've been here for so long, the people they know live in Brooklyn also, and I don't know, it's like my hometown.
I love Brooklyn because I don't think I could be anywhere else. Like what I like doing like is putting on these shows, but if I were somewhere else, like I would get busted so much better because like the cops would be different, or the neighborhood would be different, or you know, like if I tried to do what I do in a small town, like parents would like their kids would go, and then parents would find out about it, and then the parents would think I was running like a drug den or something and like trying to convert their kids to Satanism. Like it's like, you know, there's not as much understanding anywhere else, but like Brooklyn, like it's understood. Like, you know, if kids come, like they're forward-thinking kids, or you know, and their parents are down, or the parents aren't going to find out. You know, like it's really easy to do whatever you want here. Like it's you know, it's, I don't know, that's that. You know?
Questions mixed up?
No, I'm just trying to go through a bunch of them. I'm just trying not to. Do you find that indie is rooted in punk music?
Is Rooter?
Rooted.